Shalom, my friends. This is Parashat VaYera 5781. And this fall and winter, I hope to talk a little bit, explore a little bit mitzvot that we learn each week from each week's Parsha. I found this mitzvot from the Parsha, Halakhah LeMaaseh, right? Halakhah for the doing, for what concretely comes down in the Parsha. Most mitzvot obviously are in Exodus and VaYikra, but there are some interesting things that we learn even in Bereshit already, in the Genesis stories. How does our story start this week? Parashat VaYera, it says, VaYera elav Elohim Adonai be'alonei Mamre, vehu yoshev petach ohel kechom hayom. The Lord appeared to him, to Abraham, by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. So Abraham is visited by God, by Adonai. And one of the famous mitzvot that come from there is the mitzvah of bikur cholim, of visiting the sick. God himself comes to visit Abraham, which the Midrash, the rabbinic interpretation, assumes that this is happening right after he had circumcised himself and was healing. But what's even more interesting for me this week is how the story continues. Looking up, he, Abraham, saw 3 men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, Adonai, im na matzati chen be'enecha, al na tavor mi'al avadecha. My Lord, if it please you, do not go past your servant. And then he offers his great hospitality. He invites them in. Sarah is starting to cook, gives them water, he gives them bread. He slaughters a calf to offer his hospitality. And this is another mitzvah that comes from there. He offers the mitzvah, the commandment of hospitality, of opening our houses to guests, to bring them in, to feed them, to be open to strangers, to be open to having guests and give them a shelter. Now, that's also very important, but the real intriguing part is that if we put these 3 verses together and juxtapose them, we see that Abraham gets a visitation from God. And then he sees 3 men walking by and basically turns the back to God. God, who is coming, the sovereign of the world. And he goes over and says, and offers hospitality to these 3 men who he is not aware yet that this is another way of appearance of God coming to him. He sees them as 3 men. And the Talmud picks up on this when the Talmud says about this story, this incident with Abraham. The Talmud says in Shabbat 127a, hospitality to wayfarers is greater than welcoming the divine presence. And this is interesting because it brings up the tension between 2 core principles, between mitzvot ben adam lemakom, mitzvot between myself, our human beings, and God, and mitzvot ben adam lechavero, mitzvot between ourselves and other human beings. And what the Talmud here, and this is a tension that we find throughout of Judaism. What is more important? Ritual mitzvot, praying, or mitzvot that concern our next fellow human being? And here, the Gemara, the Talmud, clearly says, look at Abraham. He was in the divine presence. He was gifted to receive God as a visitor. And when he sees other people coming, seemingly strangers who are on their way through very dry, arid area, who might need water and food and drink, he gets up, turns his back to God, and goes ahead to offer his hospitality. And how does the Midrash read this? How does the Midrash learn the legitimacy of this approach? Well, when we see in verse 3, it says, Abraham says, Vayomer Adonai, imna matzati chen be'enecha. Lord, if it please you, if it please you. The Pshat originally would think, he speaks to these three strangers. To one of them he addresses. But the Gemara in its explanation says, no, he actually turns to God. Adonai is not directed to the strangers, but to God, saying, God, if you please, hang on, wait for me. I'll be back to converse with you. But now I see these people ahead of me who need food and drink. Let me go there and be patient. And God agrees. So the Adonai here in the Pasuk being directed to God, that's how the Midrash reads it, instead of directed to the visitors. And I find this interesting because it gives us a clear vote of our clear direction. We are a synagogue, we have a daily minyan, we are in prayer, we do many, many mitzvot celebrating our holidays. But particularly in this week of the election, and I know I spoke already quite a long time here, in this week, I think what's at stake here is that we go out to our fellow human beings, that the rupture that the elections have shown us, demonstrated, that is in our society, in this America, where there's a deep divide. Let's go out to our fellow human beings and take care of each other. Take care of justice. Take care that our democracy stands strong. Take care of each other, to be there for each other throughout this difficult period. I think this week we go clearly with the mitzvah of mitzvah Adam ben lechavaro. I think this is what I take away this week from Parashat VaYera. Shabbat Shalom.